Hello and welcome back. In the last video, we looked at CI and building on from there, we looked at the whole build experience that circles around you within VSTS and how it provides you the information radiators to keep a tab on the KPIs that make most sense for you. In this specific video, we're going to talk about agents. Now, agents are really the fuel that run your CI process. If you don't have the agents, then who's going to do the heavy lifting of executing your CI and CD and fundamentally the build? Microsoft provides you about 200 plus minutes of free hosting on their agent every month on every VSTS account. But after that, you can either purchase more hosting from them using an Azure subscription, or you can set up your own agent. Another reason to go and look at setting up your own agent is if you have any dependencies on any third-party products that needs to be installed on the build system, then setting up your own agent kind of makes sense. But if that dependency can be manifested through a NuGet package or a library, then you don't really need to go off and set up an agent yourself. In this specific video, we'll look at two ways of setting up the agents. The first one is setting up an agent just manually on your machine. The second technique would be to look at Azure DevTest Labs and set up an agent on an Azure DevTest Lab machine. And then in the next video, I'm going to show you a really cool automated way of provisioning VSTS agents using ARM definitions. You know, the whole thing about infrastructure as code, we'll put it to test in the next video. But for this video, let's look at setting up the agents manually and then following that through with setting them up in Azure DevTest Labs. Okay, so let's get right into the demo here. All right, so I'm in Visual Studio Team Services. The first thing I want to show you is from the home page, if I navigate into the build and release section, I can see there is a sub-tab here called Resource Limits. Within Resource Limits, I can see how many hosted minutes are available to me and how much of that I've already used, along with any further pipeline licenses that I might have purchased. Now, if I want to install my own agent, it's as simple as going into the scope of a project, and let's select the demo project here, and then click on Agent Queues. And then I have the option of downloading an agent. So when I click Download Agent, it gives me the screen where I can select whether I want to download an agent for Windows, OS X, or Linux. In this case, I'm running on a Windows machine, so I'm simply going to click Download. It also provides you the exact PowerShell script that you need to run to install the agent. But rather than doing that, I'll walk you through the process myself. Now, I've downloaded the agent already and put it in a directory called C agent, and I've extracted the file. As you can see here, these are the components that come out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to launch the command prompt, run as administrator, and then from that point onwards, I'm going to navigate into the C agent directory. Now at this point, before configuring an agent, I need to know which pool the agent needs to go in. Now, pool is really a logical categorization of the infrastructure. You could have one agent, and on that agent, you could run 10 instances of the agent, and each of those instances can be dished out to a separate pool. Pools can be consumed by projects and build definitions. So it gives you a way of maximizing the resource and the compute that is available on the VM to you. In this case, I'm going to set up a new queue and new pool, and I'm going to call this local, because I'm really setting up the agent locally, so it kind of makes sense to call this out as local. So going back now, if I run the command configure.cmd, it gives me an option here to specify the URL of VSTS that I want to configure the agent against. In this case, I'm going to copy the URL right from here. Then it says, how would you like to authenticate with the agent? In this case, I'm going to agree to use my personal access token. Like I showed you in the earlier videos, you can download a PAT or create a new PAT by going into the security section, and from within security, clicking on personal access token and generating a new PAT. I've already downloaded a PAT. I've got it available here. So I'm simply just going to reuse this PAT here. The next thing, it's going to try and make a connection with the server, and it asks me which pool does the agent need to go in. I'm going to select local. It gives me an option to specify a name, but I'm going to just select the default. It's scanning my machine now to see what core frameworks I have installed on my machine. At this point, you can see the agent starts to show up, but it's showing up as red because while it's configuring, it's fully not configured yet. It asks me what is the work directory I would like to choose for this agent. I'm going to just select the default. Now at this point, I could run the agent as a local Windows service on my machine or run it in the console. For this demo, I'm going to run it in the console, and I would encourage you to do that as well time and again. When you're debugging a code that's failing a build, you really want to see what the diagnostics of the build execution is. At that point, you may not have access to the remote agent where the build is running, but it's so easy to just download an agent, configure it in debug mode, and then run the build on it so you can see the actual details of what's going on. And it also gives you a way then to access the artifacts and the tasks that are being downloaded. And I'll run through that in the demo as we progress with the configuration. So I'm going to select not to install the agent as a service and just have it running in the console. Now at this point, to run this up, I'm going to have to run the following command. As you can see, this has gone green, so the agent is up and available. Let's do this. I'm going to navigate back into the Summit repository, and let me actually navigate back into the build that I'd set up for Summit. And let's queue a new build, but rather than run this build on the hosted Visual Studio 2017 instance, let's run it on the local instance. Now, as you can see, the agent picks up the job right away, and it shows the status here saying running job build. Behind the scenes, you can see that it's downloading the tasks. So if I open up the directory, the working directory of the agent, and I go into tasks, you can see that the tasks are being downloaded here. So if a certain task is failing and you want to get to it, well, this is the best way to diagnose it. It's getting the code and restoring the NuGet packages. So if I go into source, I can see it's doing that. It's got the source here. The packages have been downloaded. It's executing the test, which should start to show up in the test results section here. Great, so the build execution has completed. You can see all the artifacts have been published here and are locally available. So best to use this technique if you're diagnosing your build failures or trying to set up a build process for which you need to have more access to the information and the artifacts that get generated during that process. So this was the first way of configuring agents. Again, quite manual in nature and not very future-proof as you're configuring this on your local machine. So join me in the next demo where we'll take this a notch forward and use the Azure Dev Test Labs to set up an agent.